Okay, we have so much to talk about. So I'm going to first off say, welcome. Thank you so much for sharing space together in this very vulnerable time. So first off, I'm wondering if everyone who feels comfortable could turn on their videos for a second, just so we could see one another. I think it would be really valuable just being in space together. If you don't feel comfortable, that's certainly fine. But for those of you that do, thank you so much. And thank you so much for being here, for showing up, and for spending time with these amazing artists. And I think what is so amazing about them is their really moving ability to carry a flexibility and an sense of innovation as storytellers in this very critical time when we really need storytellers more than ever, and ones who really care about what it means to live in a just world. I would love for those to take a very quick poll and ask you to either raise your hand function or to raise your hand if you are a theater artist. Raise your hand if you are a theater artist. Thank you. And that is exciting. And then I would love for you all to raise your hand if you are a director. Great. So we can see who's in the room together. And raise your hand if you are overwhelmed, sad, feeling a tremendous amount of anxiety and fear and maybe some hope. Raise that hand if you feel like holding it up. Okay, thank you so much for being in this together. For those of you who haven't been to a virtual salon, this will last an hour. There should be time for a few questions at the end. So first and foremost, it would be wonderful to have each of the panelists take a moment and introduce themselves to you. Their bios are on our website, and Kaz will put it in the chat. But actually, the question that I would love each panelist to share or answer with all of you is, what is the work that they have been making right now in this moment that they can describe to you? So I would love to start with Tamilla.
Oh, hello. Hi. I was so ready to listen. The work that I've been making in the moment in this not being able to gather in physical spaces. We just wrapped a show called Long Distance Affair. Me and Anna Majananu of Pop-Up Theatrics, we were asked by artist family members to relaunch this show that we created 11 years ago that was conceived as a way for extraordinary artists who were living in on different continents and in different countries to make a dynamic collaboration via Skype. Remember Skype, y'all? Back then, it was about getting the artists who were in different locations in one room together, and so we were asked to relaunch that, and we relaunched that on Zoom. But this time, it was about getting artists in different continents and countries and languages together with audience in different countries and continents and languages together to tell stories that we needed to hear at this moment: stories of inspiration, stories of joy, stories of gathering. And we completed that 10 days ago.
It was pretty incredible. I love traveling to many different countries. You're artists and having this kind of intimate experience with the audience. And what was, I'm sure there are many takeaways, but what was a moment of learning for you as a director going through this creative process?
The thing that was corroborated was that we can gather and be in each other's company in many different ways, and that we can feel intimate connections as artists creating across different platforms, that we can still sustain intimate connections in storytelling. And that was corroborated. And also, what kind of stories do we need right now? And stories of hope and grace and healing and funny things and extraordinary things, and to see miracles happen. That was something that I was like, yes, we need miracles. We need those right now.
Great, wonderful. Thanks so much, Tamilla. Janani, can I turn the tables over to you for you to describe what you've been working and thinking about?
Totally, thank you. Hi, I'm Janani. I'm an artist based here in New York, and a lot of my work is done in collaboration with astrophysicists, including a group of astrophysicists here at the Museum of Natural History. And then I work closely with another astronomer over in Colorado Springs. A lot of my different projects, what I've been attempting to do is root down deeper into the questions that were at the heart of those projects, and use those questions to expand into what can happen responsively and resiliently in this moment, but also set us up for the world I would like to live in beyond this moment as well. So one example, this project I've been working on for a couple of years with this astronomer from Colorado. She works on binary star systems. So about half the points of light that you see in the sky are actually two stars, but they're so far from us that our eyes can't optically resolve them as two stars. She works on stars where at the end of their lives, one star will give its matter over to its companion. And in scientific journalism, this has often been covered as a vampiric or cannibalistic interaction. And we wanted to reclaim outer space as a space of exchange, reciprocity, and feminist narration. So we called our project The Gift to emphasize the agency of the donor star. And it's a performance installation in which you share an audio or captioned interaction in whatever language you speak with a fellow audience member. And at the end of that interaction, they give over this pop-up book they have been reading that has the story of gravity and these stars. And you read this book in your own time, in your own language. And then as you cycle out of that universe, you become someone reading and gifting the book on to the next person. Since accessibility along many different vectors, including sight, hearing, language, and ability to pay was always an investigation at the core of that project. What we're doing is opening up social distancing and remoteness as another vector of accessibility inside that project. So trying to imagine that, yes, there are new questions being opened up, but a lot of the strategies that we were engaging with already are still the right strategies. And I find a lot of solace in what astronomy, both as a practice of contemplation and observation, and the sky as a site of story and poetry and exchange, what that can teach us about living through this time.
Great, thank you so much for sharing. It's really so liberating to be able to think about the universe and the role that directors and storytellers can play in the way that you're describing. So not only are we crossing way out of the United States with Tamilla, we're crossing into the universe with you. So we're really grateful to have some time with you. I'd love to shift things over to Jenna for you to describe, Jenna, what you've been up to in this time.
Sure. Hi there, everybody. I'm Jenna Worsham. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm a stage director and an activist. I work mostly in the world of off-Broadway, and regionally. I I call myself an arts activist because of the communities I engage with and the stories that I'm committed to, which are basically marginalized American stories that are not given visibility on stage very often in the American theater. Primarily, I'd say I work with the trans and queer communities in the theater, the formerly incarcerated community, the autism spectrum disorder community, and working class communities, specifically from rural areas. I, like a lot of artists, I'm sure a lot of people in this room as well, had a show that got shut down when COVID struck in March. It was actually a Rattlestick show, the siblings play by the amazing Rendera Santiago. So I was out of a job and went upstate with my wife. We're both immunocompromised, and I was trying to think of a way to not feel so useless as an artist during a time when so many people were giving so much on the front lines of the crisis. So I started talking to a close collaborator of mine, Katja McMullen, and we came up with this idea to try to make theater for a cause and to aid workers on the front lines. And we ended up doing a lot of research on different organizations in the city, and because hunger is an issue that existed far before the pandemic and will exist after, unfortunately, particularly for kids in this country. And it's one that was personal to all of us, to Katja and myself. We decided to make that our mission, to make new theater, to raise funds for hungry kids during the pandemic. So we partnered with No Kid Hungry, which is an incredible organization that does really great work around the country to feed kids in various communities, especially during this time and while schools have been closed. And the sort of structure that we dreamed up was that we would ask 10 to 12 playwrights to write a new monologue or scene with a paired actor for each round, and that we would do up to 5 rounds or 5 performances of the show. We decided to call this the Homebound Project. We've already had 2 shows, and we have 3 more that will stream later this summer. Currently though, and if you're asking sort of what I'm doing right now in this moment, we've actually postponed our 3rd edition as an organization in solidarity with what's happening in our country in this moment, and in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement, and in solidarity with Black artists. So we are actually currently on hold in this moment in an effort to elevate and draw attention to other voices that are really important in this moment in time. So that's where I'm at right now.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that, Jenna. And Michael, why don't you describe what you've been up to?
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm Michael Urie, and my pronouns are he, him, his. I'm mostly an actor, so I feel a little out of place being on a director panel. I've directed a little bit, I've produced a little bit, and I've actually been able to do all 3 during this time. At first it was mostly acting. We did a live stream of a play that I did at the Rattlestick called Buyer and Seller, which we did in our living room. We cleared out our living room and put on a play, which was a lot of fun, and a lot of people saw it, and we raised some money. And then I was in a couple of other Zoom readings, and I directed a Zoom reading, which was fascinating. But the last month and the next month really are focused on the Pride Plays Festival, which I'm a co-producer on, that also started at the Rattlestick last year. And when the pandemic hit, we decided to, we had already made all of our decisions about what to produce for Pride Plays this year. So we decided to give all of our artists of new plays the option to go online with us, or wait until next year. And a lot of them decided to work. They wanted to get the work done. And we have an incredible lineup of plays that are being workshopped, and then a really exciting lineup of plays that anyone can see on Playbill.com, starting this Friday with Danye Our Love's play 1 and 2. That'll be on Playbill.com. And then in the meantime, we're working on finishing up casting and giving these artists that have written plays the time and the space to work. Jenna is one of our directors this year of a wonderful new play. Ethan directed for us last year, and we're at this point figuring out how to make art during this time, how pride can be a call to solidarity in this time, and what the work means for us now, when the work is important to do now, and when it's important to hold off on now. And in fact, we've made some decisions to hold off on some things. And we are keeping our eyes open and listening very carefully, and holding each other closer. I mean, the Pride Plays community is quite a few people at this point, and we are holding each other close and listening to each other, and finding a way to make good work that will hopefully help as we change, as we move through this, or as we rebuild this.
Great. I think you're bringing up some really interesting questions that I think we'll circle back with. Ethan, it would be great to hear you introduce you and your work and what you've been doing over these past few weeks.
Yes. Hi, everyone. It's good to be with you. I'm Ethan Hurd, he, him, his. I'm a founding co-artistic director of Heartbeat Opera here in New York. And we were working on our adaptation of Verdi's Macbeth. I think I can say Macbeth in Zoom. Called Lady M. And we were going to be performing at Irondale in Brooklyn, May 11th through 16th. But we decided to take our collaboration online. We did a 10-day remote residency in April. And then we just finished up a run of 32 virtual soirees, which were hour-long performances on Zoom, where we invited about 20 to 30 guests to commune with us around our collaboration. We had 2 live performances per soiree, so 2 singers rotating through. We have a cast of 6 singers and 6 instrumentalists. And in addition to the 2 live performances, we screened a behind-the-scenes documentary, which sort of showed how we made the work on Zoom, and then a music video of Lady M's sleepwalking scene, which was filmed by and audio recorded by the singers independently, and then layered together and edited all together. So it was a whirlwind, and I think I'm just still processing it all and appreciating it all, trying to absorb what we learned. But it was a thrill. I mean, it was hard work, but it was a thrill to reach actually more people than we would have in person. So we were able to reach, 740 households, more than 1,000 people on 5 continents. So the accessibility of Zoom is something I'm really loving and thinking about moving forward in these coming weeks and months. We were able to keep ticket prices really low, but then there was a wonderful outpouring of organic donation support, which may not be sustainable forever, but was a really heartwarming thing to experience right now. Of course, these past, couple of weeks, we've also been wrestling with opera's really troubled history as a discriminatory, racist industry and tradition in terms of certain canonical pieces. And so as a company, we gathered some of our Black alumni last week and really had a probing, heartfelt forum about what Heartbeat can do to make anti-racist work and to pursue racial justice in our work and administration. So we're in the thick of grappling with all of those big questions as well.
Great. I think actually that's a great segue, and I'd love to toss this question out to all of the panelists and say, where are you personally in this moment of examining yourself and your work and your practices? I will say personally, I have been doing quite a bit of reflection and conversation and listening and sort of all those things. And I would love to ask the panelists, not in any I won't calling you kind of order, but just an idea exchange to say, where are you personally at? Where is your heart at? Where's your head at? What does it mean to be a storyteller right now? What are you wrestling with? And I recognize that I'm asking vulnerable questions, but this is a vulnerable time. And if we're not asking vulnerable questions together, I don't know how we're going to move the needle of change. So I'm going to sort of throw that out and look forward to each of you picking up that baton as you may.
Well, I guess, this Pride Place thing that we do, it was something we started last year, and we learned very quickly. We started it as a celebration of the 50th anniversary of Stonewall, and we thought maybe we can tell the story of the queer experience by looking back. But we realized very quickly that we couldn't, because the queer experience as it is not represented in the history as it's been told. Certainly not in the theater. And so we had to focus not on looking back, but on looking forward. And that's something that we are doing again this year, is looking forward. That's why we opened submissions this year. But this is what I've learned in the last few weeks about Pride Plays, is that, and about like how quickly and easily it was for me to obtain a leadership position. I've been very struck by this idea of power, especially in the theater, that has come up in conversation, and about who obtains the power and how they get it, whether it's from money or from fame or whatever. And the truth is that when I started in the business, I couldn't really get in the door of any places until I got on TV, and I was on a big hit TV show, and then I could get into any door I wanted in the theater. And that was not lost on me, and I definitely took advantage of that. That like my fame got me in the door. But it wasn't until I started a festival last year that and this is not a very expensive endeavor. We don't like, it's not that much money that goes into it to make it, but we were able to raise the money we needed so easily, and I was able to get people to commit to the money so quickly. And I realized how easy it was for me, yes, somebody from theater, and yes, somebody from TV, but a white person, to ascend to a leadership position. It was really easy. And as I look around, that's all I see in leadership positions. So much, or not all I see, but it's so much of what I see in leadership positions is these people who have ascended quite easily, and then seem to hold their position and not let go. And that's the thing that today, I mean, you asked, what am I thinking about? What am I examining? As I spend most of my time trying to, cast and produce these readings, it's that how easy the ascension to power came to me, and how easy it's been to raise money and get people to return my phone calls, and just how much the theater has, how much I have benefited by being white in the theater, and being gay too, by the way. Not all walks of life benefit you when you're gay, but the theater does. I've had quite a bit of luck in the theater thanks to being gay. That's not lost on me either. So it's been, having to think about all the things that I maybe knew in my heart but didn't admit to myself, and the things that I didn't know, that I didn't realize, that I was ignorant of, while also spinning the plates of producing this festival, has been quite challenging, and is often, and every day, 3 times a day, I think we should have just canceled the whole festival. But the truth is, a lot of our artists are very happy to have it and have come forward, and we've been very open and of course given everyone the opportunity to postpone if they want, and some have, but we need to speak to this moment artistically. I mean, we need to stand up as activists, which I think all artists are, but we also need to speak to this moment artistically, and even if we're not working on something that quite speaks to the moment, I think the work is important. And I mean, the first part of this pandemic, I kept thinking we need the theater back so that we can uncover our feelings about what the pandemic was. And now we have another pandemic, and we again need our feelings back. So I'm actually today, right now, this minute, pretty hopeful about what stories are going to come out of the theater. And that's in part because of all the amazing artists that I'm working with in Pride Plays, but also in part because of how brave people are being right now. And
Great. Thank you so much for sharing all of those thoughts and where you're at. Other panelists? It's okay, we'll take time and wait.
I think something I guess I can offer, though I'm not honestly feeling particularly hopeful at this moment. I think what's happening is obviously a good thing, right? I think I don't trust the system of American theater to make real change as a result of it, and counting myself among that system and part of the problem as a white artist who benefits from it. I don't know. I think a lot of us are getting a lot of very well-worded statements from a lot of institutions. And I think time will tell, whether or not those are simply statements of the moment, if they're more like a Facebook post, or if they're actually things that the community is going to invest in. I guess this question is also really complex and difficult. This question, I don't know, like it seems like it might be in some ways unintentionally a part of the white supremacist culture of the American theater in and of itself, because the question almost feels like we're acting as if the problem didn't exist before, which I know that's not the intention. And I hope we all know that it did exist before, that this is not a new pandemic. It's a pandemic that's existed for centuries. The little I feel like I can offer to the conversation is that I'm someone who grew up in the Deep South, in a rural area, in a deeply racist household and culture, and who moved to New York at 22. And over the course of my 10 years here, I think I have been educated in the different but equally harmful white liberal racist culture, which is what I associate with white fragility, my own included. And that to me, was even more difficult to navigate, and is in some ways far more insidious because it is so elite in our culture, and its exclusivity in the way that we as white artists choose not to see it or acknowledge it on a daily basis. It just so happened that my theater family and my close collaborators, when I came to New York at 22, the people I found and that found me, just happened to be mostly Black and POC artists. So we have come up together as collaborators, as artist family. We were each other's graduate school. We were each other's education in a lot of different ways. And we move as a pack. I have privilege to a lot of spaces before a lot of my collaborators because of my white skin, and I bring them with me, and they bring me with them into other spaces. And I have found that over the past 10 years that is a way of working within this system that feels authentic, that feels like true, I guess, white anti-racist thinking, as people are calling it these days. So I guess I would offer and encourage that if you're someone who wants to do more, I think we need to invest in these stories in a personal way, invest in these artists in a personal way. You know, if you're a director like myself, are these the plays, are these the artists that you're sending out to theaters? Are these the plays that you're giving workshop opportunities to? Are these the kinds of artists you're bringing into, you know, different types of fellowship programs, et cetera, that you have connections to? I mean, those are all very active ways that we can work against the system itself.
Great. Thanks so much for sharing. And I also want to acknowledge what also Morgan Janess is talking about in the chat. This question has been floating around for many, many years, including in TCG panels for 30 years. So what can we make different? Do we want to maintain the system? I'm curious if any of the other panelists want to join and sort of share any reflections or thoughts in this moment too.
I want to say that, like so many of us, I think I'm feeling overwhelmed, tired, full of hurt for others, and just grief that we've lost certain opportunities. I canceled my wedding. You know, pain for folks who are suffering under systemic oppression and have been. And I find that just so overwhelming on the one hand. And then on the other hand, I know that all I can do is put one foot in front of the other and lead with love and lead with small decisions that will hopefully add up to something meaningful. And I think, kind of like Michael, I've never felt so much responsibility as a leader. I see myself and my position of power very differently now, in terms of what can I provide my small community of artists? What kind of invitations can I make? And how do I keep my community thriving? It's the pandemic has sort of brought things down to very fundamental questions for me about what is the artist doing for our audience, and what does the audience need from us right now? And so I'm doing a lot of soul searching that I find very, very important and very fundamental. And I'm just hoping that I can stay focused and keep my priorities straight as we, move through these weeks and months.
Great, thank you. Tamilla or Janani, do either of you want to share any thoughts on this?
I'm thinking about systems a lot, and things we take for granted. And so we think that they are the way they are because that's the way they have to be. And trying to examine assumptions for myself about what makes a theater company run, where how do we invest in the artists in a really profound way, like really put forward our trust in them and allow those artists that we've invited into our spaces to have room to fail and grow and to be committed to them, and also commit to the audiences that are experiencing that work, and that it's not enough for me as a facilitator, as an artistic leader. It's not enough for me to like give someone a slot in my season. I have to surround them with everything that I can to help them succeed, which includes an audience that can reflect back at them the fact that they understand that experience, and that's and just what is continuing to ask questions of myself that keep me undoing assumptions that I have been bred into over the course of my love affair with the theater, and that will help me see that things are possible outside of what I could have imagined even 5 months ago or 4 months ago or 3 months ago. So I'm asking a lot of questions.
Thank you so much for sharing all of those things in terms of asking questions and challenging assumptions. Janani, is there anything you would like to share on this subject as well before we move on?
Yeah, I think, and I hope my video is better because I know it was bad before because my internet is whatever it is. I think I'm thinking how to take inspiration from the activists, organizers who've been working for so long on movements around police abolition and thinking about some of the historic wins that have been achieved in the past few weeks. And so thinking really tactically of like, okay, well, shame is not tactical and empty solidarity statements are not tactical. What do we do right now to enact really concrete institutional change? I have a lot of anger that frankly, a lot of cultural institutions have, as people have pointed out, a lot of white leadership. A lot of the staff that has been let go and artists who have been cut are artists of color and Black artists, in also production staff, right? Who is at what tier of job? How is power being organized in especially New York theater and other cultural institutions? And frankly, that needs to be upended because the people who are making the work other people are profiting off of are the artists and the creators and kind of arts workers, production staff, etc. So I'm really thinking kind of tangibly, how do we incorporate those lessons that we're learning about, from that broad movement ecosystem that has been developed over decades, centuries, how then this moment of uprising was able to help catalyze some incredible changes. What can we do in the theater that also kind of reflects that model? It would be really sad to me if the only outcome of this were, as other people have pointed out, well-worded paragraphs and not an upending of who is actually getting paid and how. I also really deeply want an opening up of stories that people are allowed to tell, and not the assumption that if you are a certain marginalized person, there's like a band of stories you are allowed to tell. And I want everyone to have the opportunity to fundamentally remake and imagine the universe we want to live in, and the earth we want to live in. So yeah, how do we create the pragmatic containers in which wild imagination can flourish for everyone is the question I'm sitting with.
I just want to sort of point out and name a bunch of things that have been talked about in terms of power, examining assumptions, making sure that there is room to fail, committing to audiences that reflect the work of the artists.
I'm hoping you all can talk about, the panels can discuss the stories that you want to see and the ways that you dream of making them. That we could spend a few moments on the possibilities and the hope. And I guess you guys get the point. And I'm curious, Janani or Tamilla, if one of you can begin first, since you spoke last in the previous questions.
I said earlier today on another conversation that the stories that I wanted to see were I want, and it's exactly what you said, that I want to put forward stories of the future that we want to engage in, the kind of world that we want. I want to, the theater is a rehearsal for real life, right? And if that's the case, then let's put forward real stories about how it should be and can be. And let's untether our imaginations from the things that we assume have to be in the world to the things that we understand in our own soul and our heart must really be. There's room enough for all of us. That's something that's really hard to imagine right now. It is really hard to imagine, but this place is vast. Our ability to embrace each other is profound. It's big, it's large. We need to be told that again and again and again until we really believe it, until we understand that we're not operating from not enough, but we have so much we can't even see it all. That's actually what I want to be told.
I want to so much echo that about radical imagination as a thing that I am super interested in. I think, again, my heart has felt so warmed by so much of the media that has come out recently, imagining a world without police, where public safety is reimagined to actually be public safety and well-being. And yeah, what are all the other things where we assume that it has to be this way, that we can just say, no, it's going to be this whole other way that actually serves people. We're going to build systems that are interconnected and caring and beautiful. I really have been sitting with imagination as a deep issue of public health, and that creating that space of imagination is important to a public health ecosystem. So I don't know if it's as much specific story as I want to see. I just want more and more people, through the actions of what we do as artists, but really instigators of worlds, to invite more people into the co-imagining of our Earth and universe.
I want to jump in and echo some words: embrace, imagination, care. I've been thinking a lot about how to express care, both to artists and to audience, and especially in Zoom. I to welcome people into this virtual space in a loving way, and make them feel seen and heard, even though we are scattered and isolated. And I think Zoom actually can be a very powerful tool for that. And with Heartbeat's recent work, we realized, in a traditional theater, often we don't interact with 90% of our audience. They come and go from the theater space without us even seeing them eye to eye. But in Zoom, we actually have a face-to-face interaction with each audience member. And so we can actually go deeper in those relationships. So that's my small offering.
And I think, really importantly, champion the voices that are brave enough and creating those new and imagined ways of making, right? I think that I've been thinking a lot about the elitism of what we do, and how, so often those brave imaginative voices are not coming out of the elite grad programs around the country, that so often the path is not clear for those of us who are, not coming out of those elite programs, or with, that kind of inherent privilege, especially. So I personally want to commit to putting those stories on stage in newly imagined ways. The Homebound Project, one of the things that brought it about, just from my artistic gut, was this idea that, even though theaters, just like schools, are empty right now, our imaginations are not. And imaginations can be a very powerful thing. Why can't a play be something that's recorded and streamed on video? Why can't I call that theater? If my playwright is writing with theater in mind, something that's meant to be live, something that's meant to be spoken to its audience in the moment, if we decide that's theater right now, because it's all we have, then that's theater right now. And I think we were just overwhelmed by the response, by the number of theater artists who said, yes, I want to do this. Yes, I'm hungry to collaborate. I'm hungry to make something, and also make something that's going to help feed kids right now. It was very motivating, and people showed up like they often do in the theater. When push comes to shove, we show up for each other. And I'd like to see a lot of that right now.
Michael, do you want to say anything before I address some questions on the? Great.
Sure. Yeah. I briefly, because that's such a beautiful question. What kind of work do we want to see? And I have to admit, I haven't really been thinking about that, because I've been focused on the work that I have to do right now. But But when I heard Tamilla say, putting out that we have that power, it made me think about that power to like make the world what we want it to be. That's what theater is. It made me think about how, you know, when I see a play and it's over and I'm not in a conversation about it, or I'm no longer like the play ends and I don't think about it anymore, I don't talk about it anymore, even if I had a good time, that it's really not gonna, that it doesn't stay with me. And I always thought, like, how do you marry these two ideas? The idea that you can go and have a good time watching a play and enjoy yourself and have fun, but also leave thinking about it and talking about it. And is it that we put on stage what the world could be, and that it can both make us happy and entertain us and send us away different, send us away better, send us away different. And that's a lot to think about. That's a big thought. That's a big thought for my little head. And I, yeah, I think I want that. I want that.
Yeah, the alchemy is what is so important, right? That's what happens when we all sit in the space together, whatever that space is, that we're all of our collectively changing whatever that space was when it was empty, you know, and makes possible something. You know, and sometimes the art and the artist, you know, we rise to the level of, you know, of possibility, and sometimes we don't. But we all sit there with, you know, a bated breath, going, I think I might be changed. And you know, the lights go down, and there's that moment of whatever happens when the lights come back up, I won't be exactly the same, you know. And so we drag ourselves to the theater, not because that's our conscious thought, but because that's our experience. And so audiences are already asking us to be changed. That's the point. Change me, change me, change me. Send me out of here a better freaking human. Help me find my way. Help me be unafraid. Help me be courageous. Help me be generous. Help me see.
I think some audiences are asking for that. I mean, that's my ideal audience. But to be honest with you, my experience in a lot of, you know, the off-Broadway audience world is that a lot of people just want to be told that they're okay, you know? They just want to be entertained. They just want to be told that they're good people and not racist and not sexist and not homophobic and all of those things. So I would just add that I want to see those stories on stage too, more than anything. But I think we also have to put the stories on stage that acknowledge what we are right now, not just what we want to be, because I don't think we acknowledge what we are, especially a lot of our audience.
There are some questions from the chat that, well, first off, thank you so much about talking about the imagination and the possibilities. I think that is expanding and so very necessary in this moment. I want to just look towards the chat for some questions from Victor and Fleece that are sort of circling around what are the changes that we need to see from institutions and producers to burn down this previous system of exclusivity and white supremacist culture, and what resources do you as directors need from the producers and from audiences and from funders in order to make this radical imagination a reality? Can you all speak to that?
I actually wonder if this is a moment to use that kind of strategy of radical imagination to create the space of radical imagination. So I would present a speculative exercise. So if 100 years from now, we want to live in a society, I do, where philanthropy has been dismantled because there is no wealth inequality. Therefore, funders do not have power over what is being artistically created. And audiences have democratic access to the art that we are making, and art and freedom of expression is something inherent to human life. Think about that future and feel into it 100 years from now. Instead of thinking, how do we sustain our foundation for the next 3 centuries? Think, how do I work towards that future where I am no longer necessary to this ecosystem? That's the kind of work I want us to be doing co-creatively as funders, artists, producers. I mean, frankly, I would like my role in society to shift too, because I don't want art to be a specialized profession. I want that capacity for creation to be available to more people as part and parcel of everyday life. So having that sense of transformation, not of obsolescence, like we're not trying to become useless as people. We are trying to become more expansive as people. Yeah, so I don't know what that tactic will look like for every institution. I just know that that will mean, it feels really exciting to me to invest in that future rather than the one in present now where I have this sense of scarcity and needing to hoard resources to make the things I want to make, but rather the collective future in which we all thrive in creation and imagining. That's what I'm thinking.
One thing also related to this that came up at our panel prep call was, Tamilla, you were talking about not revolution, but evolution. And I wonder if you can speak a little bit more towards that as well.
Yeah, last week I was thinking, I don't know what we were talking about. It's like, oh, if we haven't been here before, then the thing we want is not to go back. You know, what we don't want is to go back. We don't want to revolve, go back around the circle. We want to break through this circle. We want to, you know, we want to exit this vortex that we're in, that we've been in this country and in this world for hundreds and hundreds of years. And so I'm proposing the idea of not a revolution, but an evolution of an exiting from something that doesn't serve us into something brand new, into a new way of being with each other. That is not shackled to old ideas of who gets what or who is valued. You know, we are so, from the moment we are sort of like leave our little rugs as kids, we begin to be saturated with ideas of value. And it takes a lot to unsaturate ourselves. Why is dark less valuable than light? You know, what are the binaries that bind us about gender and how one loves another human? And these are rules that it takes us a lifetime to undo. That work is so exhausting. Could we just like turn the light out on this thing and just leap over to the new thing? Can we just start new instead of restarting something or re-putting together? I don't want any of this stuff that's here.
I hope that you all are pretty inspired by all of these words. Janani, I'm wondering, do you have those questions handy by any chance?
I do, and I'll try to make them more concise as I read. So some of the questions I've been thinking about is, how do we frame the need for inclusion in our fields, not only as a matter of equity, but of collective expansion? The universe is changing at every moment. What are the cosmic stories and ways of relating to the universe that have been lost to ongoing genocide, displacement, and other racial violence? How can we foster space to grieve and recover some of that loss and work towards a universe where that doesn't happen? How do I root down in imagination as a public health issue and create accessible spaces for radical imagination? How can I foster alliances between arts and science that advance equity as part of our overall field's shared commitments to compassionately expanding human understanding and inquiry? How do I help remap art space in society as one of process, relationship, and becoming rather than product? What is the cosmic myth weaving we need for an earth without racial violence? Who doesn't feel belonging in the sky, and how can we make that possible? How can I agitate cultural institutions to not overcorrect for trauma by pigeonholing artists in the stories that we are allowed to tell, and instead allow us to participate in speculative and transformative world shaping? How do we remap the universe as a site of change, community, and relationship, and enlist celestial objects and phenomena as co-agents of a more caring universe?
These are such powerful questions, and I wonder if you might even be able to share them in the chat so that people can think about them, and that this idea of asking questions, of having the humility to ask all of these questions so that we can create a space that is evolved and imagined as a space where artists and audiences can fully arrive and make their work together in ways we haven't even dreamed possible is really thrilling to think about. There's so much more to talk about. I guess I will ask just one final question that was sort of brought up in the chat, and this is too long for the remaining couple of minutes, but do you have any ways in which you are looking at your artistry in this time, this Zoom social media time, that you want to leave for the artists and the directors in this space to think about? Ways in which this this medium has surprised you, or any insights that you want to leave with people related to the aesthetics of this non-meeting time?
I'll just echo access. You know, they're not everybody has access to what this is, but some other people who don't have access now have access. And that's really good. And I think that we don't want to discount this as a tool of storytelling, because it is not what the nostalgia that we have about gathering. So I just hope we don't discount it. And I also want to just say hello to Chari, who was one of the directors for Long Distance Affair and created a really beautiful, beautiful event for an audience of 5 folks to gather in Paris. And because of Zoom, I got to spend time with her and become an even greater fan of this artist. And that's what this medium can do.
Great. Any other insights people want to share?
I would just add, in terms of access, that we all be careful that our idealism, which is so important, doesn't enter into the kind of elitism that excludes a lot of artists in this business. I think so much of what we're talking about in terms of radical imagination is amazing, and it deeply inspires me. I also think it's, you know, those of us who have the time and space to seek that and imagine that, it's easy to forget those who don't have that luxury, if that makes sense, to ask these kinds of incredible questions about remapping the universe, et cetera. You know, artists who are living from paycheck to paycheck, who are coming from communities where, you know, who make up a lot of the essential workers, who are out there risking their lives in this very moment. I think we need to remember that access is an action that often, I think, it requires us to maybe step out of our own comfort zones in terms of how we talk about our art and how we make our art inclusive in these moments. I think that there is a really exciting equalizer happening, you know, in the age of streaming content theater, you know, for a lot of, I think, the stuff that this group has put together, and the Homebound Project included, the amount of, you know, money that you donate to pay for your ticket doesn't affect where you sit, for example, when you watch the show. Things like that, to me, are really exciting about this time. And I think we should embrace them. And I hope that learning from them, it's things we can take back into the actual physical spaces once we are permitted to do the thing we all love best, which is to gather. Thank you.
Such a thoughtful point. Thank you so much. Thank you, fearless panelists, for sharing yourselves in this very vulnerable moment, and we're so grateful to you for that. This is being recorded, and we will make this available to you to share with others or to listen to again. I know that I will want to listen to it again because there's such a richness of thought in here, and so many unique ways of looking at what is possible and what is the reality right now. So with much gratitude, we say thank you so very much for being in space together, and let us be in this together. So have a wonderful rest of your day.